The reaction to what happened in Brooklyn is definitely strong, but calling it a league-shaking collapse or organizational shock is a stretch. Preseason and early season games, especially ones where key players are missing, don't carry the same weight as playoff basketball. What did happen, though, is still meaningful. The Indiana Fever went into Barclays Center without several key contributors, including Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, Tiffany Mitchell, if referring to guard depth, and Damiris Dantas, and still delivered a convincing 109-91 win over the New York Liberty. That's not humiliation. It's a strong performance built on depth, energy, and execution. What actually stands out? Depth stepped up. With key starters out, the second unit got real minutes and delivered. That's valuable data for the coaching staff. Caitlin Clark's impact goes beyond scoring. Her presence alone continues to bend defenses and create opportunities, even when the roster is shorthanded. Role players gained confidence. This is exactly the kind of game that helps young or fringe players prove they belong in the rotation. Instead of framing it as a tactical masterclass that shook the league, the smarter takeaway is this. Indiana showed it has more depth and flexibility than people expected, and that matters over a long season. If anything, this game raises a more interesting question going forward. Can the Fever maintain this level of production once the full roster is back and rotations tighten? Or was this a one-game spike fueled by opportunity?
Ankle brace, whole everything, all over the whole city of New York. Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart looking like ancient people. I ain't lying. These young ladies look sensational. Now, I don't want to toot my own horn.
When you go back and watch the game, players like Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu didn't look washed. They looked like players in a preseason environment dealing with a team that brought more energy and pace on that particular night. The New York Liberty clearly expected to control the game physically, especially with Indiana missing key pieces. But the Indiana Fever flipped that script. Indiana pushed the tempo, attacked early in transition, and applied consistent pressure on the perimeter. That combination disrupted New York's rhythm more than anything else. Now, the easy reaction is to look at Caitlin Clark's stat line: 17 minutes, 7 points, inefficient shooting, and assume she struggled. But that's a surface-level take that doesn't reflect what actually happened on the court. New York's defensive approach made her the primary focus almost immediately. They picked her up high, pressured her well beyond the arc, and sent aggressive help to get the ball out of her hands. And instead of forcing shots, Clark adjusted. She accepted the traps, moved the ball quickly, and kept the offense flowing. The result? Clean looks for teammates and a noticeable uptick in pace. She finished with assists and, more importantly, took care of the ball under pressure. That's the key point. When a defense commits multiple players to one ball handler that far from the basket, it naturally opens up space elsewhere. Indiana took advantage of that. The ball movement improved, driving lanes opened up, and the offense became more dynamic. So no, this wasn't about Clark dominating the box score. It was about her influencing the structure of the defense and making the right reads. And while her impact was important, the biggest takeaway from that 109-91 result was what came from Indiana's depth. The bench production, energy, and execution were what truly separated the two teams on the night.
There was a lot to look at.
Implementing in the offseason. Defense being one of them for the Fever.
Bench is so good,
y'all. Take Johnson with the ball in her hands. Nice pass. Timpson.
I'm not even gonna lie. The Fever bench is nasty, bro. They might have the best.
For weeks, a lot of criticism around the Indiana Fever focused on depth. Questions about whether the draft class overlapped too much, whether the roster was balanced, and whether the bench could hold up against elite teams. In this game, that second unit gave a very different answer. Indiana's bench production was a major factor, putting up 62 points and sustaining the team's energy and pace throughout the game. That kind of contribution isn't something you can rely on every night, but it does show there's more depth on this roster than many expected. One of the most notable performances came from Raven Johnson. Coming into the game, she was one of the more debated draft selections, largely because of perceived overlap with Caitlin Clark. With Tiffany Mitchell, or guard depth, unavailable, Johnson stepped into meaningful minutes against a high-level backcourt. Instead of trying to do too much, she focused on her strengths: defense, effort, and decision-making. She competed on the perimeter, stayed engaged within the system, and helped keep the offense organized when needed. It wasn't about flashy numbers. It was about playing a clean, controlled game under pressure. That's the real significance here. Not that one performance proves everything, but that Indiana's younger players showed they can contribute in defined roles when given the opportunity.
Caitlin Clark ain't really play that much, man. But the most, to me, Raven Johnson stuck out. Now, granted, she only had 6 points. She had 8 assists, 0 turnovers, 3 rebounds, 3 steals, plus 3 blocks, and she was 3 for 3 from the field.
Scoring wasn't the main story for Raven Johnson. Her defensive presence was. She consistently disrupted the New York Liberty guards, jumping passing lanes, navigating screens, and applying steady ball pressure. The steals and blocks stood out, but more importantly, she made possessions uncomfortable and forced the offense to reset. On the offensive side, she played within herself and kept things organized. Running the second unit, she showed composure, moved the ball effectively, and avoided unnecessary risks. Finishing with strong assist numbers and no turnovers in that role is a positive sign, especially against a high-level opponent. What that performance suggests is simple. She can help stabilize minutes when Caitlin Clark is off the floor. That doesn't mean she replaces Clark's impact, but it does show the offense doesn't have to fall apart during those stretches. And when the system is flowing, especially with the spacing and attention Clark draws, players like Kelsey Mitchell benefit. Mitchell capitalized on those advantages, finding rhythm and showing why she remains a key scoring option in this lineup.